All right. Bruchim Habayim. So Bezat Hashem, we're going to be starting a series of lectures, perhaps every week or so. And the first one today, we'll be discussing an interesting topic that has been slightly neglected, not really discussed. And the topic is going to be discussing the concept of Tumat Ohel. So we know the Torah tells us in Sarah Bamidbar that a Kohen that comes, or any person that comes into a tent that has a corpse residing inside of it, that is going to be portraying a certain type of tumah that is not relevant to any other type of tumah. It's called Tumat Ohel. And why it's different is because that usually tumah can only be transferred either through consumption or through touching or through carrying of it. But the corpse tumah is something that is able to contract the tumah, give tumah from one to another just by being in the same room along with it. And it should be noted that it does not only apply to tents, but applies to any covering, irrespective of the distance between the two objects, between the corpse and the person, or the vessel, as long as it's under the same covering, and therefore the person would have to undergo a series of rituals that's going to make him remove the tumah as well. So now, today, just want to discuss one quick halacha regarding this, is a case in which we have cemeteries. And occasionally you find by cemeteries that there are trees that are planted right by the entrance or by the gate of the cemetery that has branches moving from one side to the other. And that we know for a Kohen, of course, it's completely impermissible for him to pass underneath an ohel. So the question would become whether this tree poses a problem for him to pass along with it as well, whether he is going to be receiving the tumah and therefore it would be invalid for him to pass underneath. So to understand this problem, we find that the Tur in the Sefer Yoreh De'ah, Siman Shin Samechtet, he says that regarding the Tumat Ohel, he says it applies to trees as well. And therefore, if a Kohen goes underneath such a tree and he does not know where the grave is located, where the corpse is located, and therefore it becomes a problem. It becomes a Safek Isur D'Oraita. It becomes a Safek Isur D'Oraita if he doesn't know under which branch the corpse is located. He cannot walk underneath any of the branches that belong to the tree. So from here we understand that it's only when it's unmarked and it's unknown where the corpse is located. However, the Prisha to this Tur, he comments and says that in a case in which we do know under which branch the corpse is located, in which there is a marked grave, walking underneath any of the remaining branches would be permissible. The Shulchan Aruch in the same Siman, he comments and he uses the exact language of the Tur and codifies this as halacha. The Taz and the Shach, they bring down the psak from the Prisha, and they says, yes, this only occurs in a situation where a person does not know where the grave is located, where the corpse is located. However, if it is known where the corpse is located, he can walk underneath any of the other branches which is not covering along. Now it should be noted that the question is whether this concept of Tumat Ohel is Isur D'Rabbanan or D'Oraita. According to the Rambam, in Hilchot Tumat Met, in Perek Yudbet Halacha Zayin, he says in order for someone to contract Tumat Ohel, it must have the width of a tefach. Meaning that a beam or a branch must have the width of a tefach in order for it to be Isur D'Oraita. So therefore the same thing would apply over here. That if the branch that he's walking under is going to be a tefach of a width, it's going to be an Isur D'Oraita. However, Tosfot comments in Masechet Nazir, I believe. He says over there that even if it were to be less, there's still an Isur D'Rabbanan. So in any situation, a Kohen will not be allowed to walk underneath. So therefore, the problem is always going to be posed. Now, with that understanding, we can look at it the following. That if you're going to be walking underneath a tree, we find this concept over here in Queens, by the cemetery by Main Street that's going towards the LIE, that if you find such a problem, that throughout that stretch of land, me and our dear friend Samson over here, we did our own research. We're walking underneath and we found that the majority of the trees over there, along that landscape, they pose such a problem, and therefore for Kohen to walk underneath the branches that are facing towards the cemetery would pose a problem, because there are graves that are found right besides the entrance of the gate. Therefore it would be posing a problem of, if not an Isur D'Oraita, then perhaps an Isur D'Rabbanan for sure. So therefore, of course, it should be known that once a person sees such trees going along the gates, and if there is a problem of where there are graves being found on the other side, it should be noted that it is a problem, and therefore he should walk on the opposite side. If he can, of course, best to walk on the opposite side of the street to not have the dilemma. But of course, there are leniencies for that as well. Now, there's an interesting psak found by Rav Moshe Sternbuch. He writes in his Halchavot Shuvot of Hanhagot, the Teshuvot, Halach Aleph, and he says over there that nonetheless, even if you have trees that are going on the opposite side that have no connection to the graves, that it's not hovering over any of the graves, still, the people who are tending to the graveyard, they should be machmir, so to speak, and to have the branches chopped up even though there's no concern whatsoever. And the reason he says so is because sometimes it is possible that a person would be confused and he does not know under which branches the grave is being resided under, and because such confusion will lead the person to perhaps even violating a Sudaraita, therefore all the branches should be chopped off so that no problem is going to be posed. So that's regarding that. However, it should be known that all this is regarding, for sure, the graves that belong to Jews. However, if it's a non-Jewish cemetery, the question is asked, does this apply as well? Does Tumat Ohel apply? Now we know for sure, according to all the Deot, that a non-Jewish corpse is able to give off Tumah from one to another if it's going to be through touching or through carrying. The question becomes whether it applies to Tumat Ohel. And regarding this, it's subject to much machloket amongst the Rishonim, notably amongst the Tosfot and the Rambam, the Rambam and the Rashba, where the majority opinion holds that there is no Tumat Ohel regarding the corpse of a non-Jew. Again, for a non-Jew, there is no Tumat Ohel, therefore the permissibility to go inside of a cemetery is fine, technically speaking. However, the Tosfot's opinion differs. He says, no, in reality, there is a problem that's being posed, and therefore, even for a non-Jewish cemetery, this concept of Tumat Ohel would be a problem, and therefore, according to that opinion, if you have trees that are hovering over the cemetery of a non-Jew, so therefore, a Kohen would not be allowed on the same reason to go underneath those trees as well, and he should go on the opposite side. Maran in the Shulchan Aruch, he goes by the majority view, and he rules leniently. He says that there is no problem Tumat Ohel for a non-Jew, and therefore a person could go through their graveyard. However, a person should be strict because of the opinion of Tosfot, and being that there is such a strict opinion, if he should be machmir to do so. Now, in conclusion to all this, we see again that regarding trees that have branches that are going on one side into the cemetery, that a Kohen should not be going through underneath, passing through the trees, because it's going to be violating an Isur D'Oraita, or at least a Isur D'Rabbanan. And this applies for sure under the circumstances where the cemetery is a Jewish cemetery. However, in the situation where we find that it is a non-Jewish cemetery, of course there is what to be lenient on, but of course, again, it is best to be strict because of the opinions that say it is asur. Have a good day.